Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of CSM Practice. We have more than 400 episodes. My guest today just informed me, and he is like, wow, this is a lot of breadth of work. And so if some of you get overwhelmed or you're looking for a specific topic, you can always hit me up on the DM on LinkedIn and say, hey, Irit, do you have a video about X? And I'll be sure to send it your way. Also, this month we introduced a new exciting thing to the channel. It's called memberships. And you can actually sign up for the lowest level, which just gives you a little bit more perks. And there's a higher level. I'll do a whole video about that later on. But for now, just go check that out. See if you wanted to support us even further. We love doing this, and we definitely need your support to continue. Every now and then I get a cool guest. Today's one of those days that I get the privilege to have somebody who used to be in the military, and then he worked at Cisco managing the partner strategy, working with the channels. Now he works at TSIA, which is one of the top research companies and associations in the technology industry. He has a lot of benchmark data and industry trends, insights you should pay careful attention to, because you're missing out. There's a lot of opportunities. And if you listen to this session and you are working either with channel or partners, or you're thinking about doing this episode will give you all the incentive that you need in order to start one up or double down on it. Jared Raftery, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So first question I got to ask you, did you fly planes in the military?
I did. My career started out of college and I went into sales. I was a carried a bag for Xerox Corporation in Ohio, and I did that for a few years. And then 9/11, the weeks that followed that, I realized that there was more to life than what I was doing. And so I was called into the Navy, became a pilot in the Navy, and put my business career on hold for about 10 years. I flew for about 6 years, went through the whole flight training and multiple deployments.
First of all, thank you for your service. That's amazing. Tell me, what are you doing these days? Who do you work with, and what kind of problems do you help them solve?
Now I lead the partner research at TSIA. TSIA is an industry research firm. We help companies that are making this transition towards recurring revenue and subscription business models. And we have 9 different research areas, and I focus exclusively on partner research. Partner research cuts across several of our research areas, such as customer success. When I was in the military, by the time I actually walked in and started was 2003, and I served for about 10 years. And then I came out 2013. But in that 10 years, a lot had happened in the world of technology. I was a kind of a salesperson frozen in time because I hadn't followed much of the trends. And then when I came back out of the military into civilian life, I started working for Cisco, kind of thrown into this area of cloud, and companies are moving to cloud, and customer success was coming forward. But I always had this lens of how do we do this through partners, because I was in a partner role at Cisco, and we were able to do a number of great things. I ended up leading their partner strategy for customer success. But when I moved to TSIA, I was then able to put data behind these insights that I was gaining as just putting experience in place. Now I was able to put data behind it and say, okay, well, what are the best practices? What's working? What's not working? It's been a great opportunity. I've been at TSIA for about 4 years.
So you talk about customer success for partners. Obviously, you did it in a tactical or strategic role in Cisco, and now you're teaching other companies about what works, what doesn't, as it pertains to partner and channel management. But this channel is about customer success. I wanted to straight up, you talk to dozens of companies almost like every quarter, certainly every month, and you do a lot of research. Does investment in customer success and educating partners about customer success actually has any kind of impact on the companies that double down on that?
Absolutely. It is across the board. Companies that invest in partners and channel for customer success see double-digit growth in both their overall partner revenue and their overall as a service partner revenue. So if you're a company that sells both hardware and software, as an example, that number would be in your overall partner revenue number. But if you want to focus specifically on adoption and customer success, that's typically in the subscription recurring revenue area. And what we see in the data is that companies that invest in their channel, in partners to drive adoption, to drive customer success, they report double-digit growth in that subscription revenue area as well.
Do you get anything out of companies investing in customer success for their partners?
I don't get anything out of it myself. I'm a researcher and I'm passionate about this and I love teaching about it.
Let's break that out. Like, why is it helpful for them? And when we say it actually is impacting double growth, like, how is this growth being impacted? So the first thing, if we take a look at maybe some of the leading indicators, what is the first thing that we see start changing when companies invest in customer success and teach their partners about customer success?
It's good to first kind of step back and remember why companies use partners in the first place. And especially this last year, there were a number of companies that were feeling pressure to do more with less. The budgets were shrinking, layoffs were increasing. And as a result, a lot of companies are continued to turn towards their channel to take advantage of economies of scale. And being able to do more with less, they can do that with their channel partners. And so what I see is a lot of companies are saying, okay, well, we're going to invest in partners. Partners, we want you to sell our subscription business or subscription offer, and then we want you to go drive adoption. And what I often see is companies start with incentives because incentives typically drive behavior. Companies trying to create incentives, but in kind of the old way. For example, the function of customer success and adoption, getting the customer to consume and use the offer to deliver the business outcome, ultimately will lead to a renewal. What I see is a lot of companies start with the incentive for renewals. And so they will entice partners to, or give them higher discounts on the renewals, thinking, okay, so if we discount a renewal, then that's going to drive the intended behavior. And what we see in the data, though, is counterintuitive. If you give partners more discount on the renewal, you'll see lower renewal rates. And the reason that doesn't work is that renewal and retention is a function of what happens upstream. It's a function of the adoption and expansion. And so where companies should be investing is how do we help partners build out that customer success function? How do we enable them to drive adoption and expansion? And that in turn will lead to improvement in retention rates and renewal rates.
So I hear a couple of things. One, only investing in incentives is too narrow. We need to expand our responsibilities as vendors towards our partners, and the offering that we have as vendors to in support of the partner should be way beyond incentives. So we'll double down on that in a second. B, if you do offer incentives, there's so much that incentives for renewals can take you. You need to think about other types of incentives. Did I get that right?
That's correct. Reimagining the incentive model for partners is what companies need to do. Partners play a number of roles across the whole life cycle, from sales, onboarding. They can do adoption. They can be responsible for adoption and expansion. They can have renewals. I wrote a paper that's on our website, 7 critical roles that partners play. But what a company should be doing is looking at the whole end-to-end life cycle. And what are we expecting partners to do? Because if a partner sells the offer and then you want them to do adoption, then there needs to be some sort of handshake that takes place. And then again, are they going to do the renewals? There needs to be a handshake that takes place there as well. And so stepping back and looking at what is it that partners are going to be doing across the life cycle. And then once you're able to see that, then you're able to understand, okay, well, what are the capabilities that they need? And then give a good assessment of where are my partners now versus where do they need to be? And then you put in place training, enablement, and then you have your incentives.
I hear that beyond incentives, we need to also offer training and think about that so that they can drive adoption as well as enablement, not just for selling our stuff, but also how to renew, how to increase adoption. Is there anything else besides incentive, training, and enablement that you think that vendors should think through, get the most out of the partners or the partner relationship?
The fourth pillar is performance metrics, because the understanding what you want partners to do and then putting a KPI or a metric in place for them to achieve that then that's how you'll know that they can actually qualify for that incentive. But then also that's the behavior that you're looking for them to do. Oftentimes companies will want partners to do adoption, but they won't actually have metrics in place that measures their partners. They'll have their own metrics for their own customer success team, but they won't have metrics to measure partners' performance. To the extent that they can make sure that the partner has the same type of training, the same type of enablement, the same type of metrics in place that their own customer success team has, then they're going to have that amount of success, because you want to be able to have the same performance from your partners as you do from your direct team in order to achieve those economies of scale.
Same metrics for partners as there are for customer success, and certainly consistent types of metrics across all of your partners if you have multiple ones. Double down on enablement, and let's talk again about incentives. You said, Irit, offering discounts on renewals only take you so far. What kind of incentives have you seen work when it comes to working with partners?
The incentives that we see work best for customer success teams are incentives around expansion. You're using any sort of subscription. In the course of your contract, if you use more of that product, then you're likely going to renew it because you're enjoying the experience and you're getting the value out of whatever that product is. One of the leading indicators of renewals is expansion. By designing an incentive for partners to drive expansion, then that is going to lead to higher renewal rate. And that's what we see. We see that in the data. We see that in the double-digit performance around partner-led as a service revenue when partners have an incentive to drive expansion.
So one, offer incentives for expansions. Do you have some data around what is a good incentive? Any tips for companies that wanted to fix their incentives? What kind of incentives, like how much incentive? Is it percentage-based, point-based? What works?
There's not an industry standard on what is the best incentive. What we see in the discounting world is you don't want to go above 20% when it comes to discounts, because when you do that, then it starts to cut into margins, and there's already thin margins, subscription software anyway. So, but the incentive doesn't always have to be financial incentive. There are other ways that within a partner program that partners can see value. It depends on how the different companies have their partner program set up, but there are rewards that partners can achieve within a company's partner program. The idea is not so much that there needs to be financial discount, a discount or rebate, MDF funds, that as much as it is designing a reward for the behavior that you want to drive.
It's so true for CSMs, by the way, as well. When companies do this right, what is the uplift that they see in partner sold revenue?
The incentives, what we see in the data is companies get a 23% uplift in their as a service revenue. And it's 23 percentage points. So it's pretty significant when it's designed correctly. There are other things that should be in place, because starting with incentives, that is one of the last things that should be put in place. Because if you don't put other things in place first, such as understanding where the partners are going to play across the life cycle, understanding what the metrics are to hit the strategy. There are critical practices. What are the roles that our partners are going to play? Is there training in place? If none of these things are in place and then you just go straight to incentives, then you could be rewarding the wrong behavior.
Well, you said that there's a 22% uplift if there's a financial incentive in place. What is the impact if they have the right training in place?
It was 23% on the incentive, is 22% actually on the training. So double-digit growth, those are percentage points increase. So it's pretty sizable if companies want to make that investment.
What about having the same metrics?
Same metrics are 26%.
How do you explain that?
When you're clear on what the expectation is, then you're more focused on the behaviors to meet that expectation. If there is not a metric in place, then it's difficult to align on what you want partners to be doing. And I see many companies with well-intended programs that don't measure partners the same way they measure their own team. And I know it's well-intended, but they're setting themselves up for disappointment because they have an expectation of what they think is going to happen. But if you don't measure for accounts that have an NPS score for partner-led accounts, if you don't measure that, then how do you know if your NPS is doing well or not for non-direct accounts. Those are the type of things that need to be measured.
Well, when you look at some of the company members of TSIA that you work with, when you talk about enablement, you look at your best in class members, what kind of enablement do they provide their partners that they have seen has had a big impact on either lowering churn or increasing retention rate or adoption?
Enablement is a broad topic. There are a lot of practices can fall under the umbrella of enablement. When we ask companies, what type of enablement do you provide in order to enable partners to drive customer success? The number one response that we get back is customer success playbooks. So they share customer success playbooks with partners. And this has been on our radar, and we've been surveying on this for several years now. What we found, though, is in all the data, we don't see any correlations between customer success playbooks and increases in retention when driven by partners. And so we started to double click into that and understand why. We asked partners, what is it that you want? What type of enablement do you want from your vendor in order to drive adoption? And they came back, and partners said they want customer success plans, not a customer success playbook, but a customer success plan. It's a nuance, but it's two different mechanisms. And what's a customer success playbook is designed to run a play, but every customer is different. Many customers have different expectations and outcomes. And a customer success plan, when that is in place, that identifies who does what. It clarifies what the specific outcome is for that specific customer. And then going back to that alignment, then you're able to execute against that plan, and partners can play their role, the vendors can play their role, and we see better data in the outcome that vendors are able to receive.
Do you know what's the gap between the percentage of partners that want success plans to the percentage of vendors that actually provide a success plan template and a playbook on how to use it?
There's a pretty significant gap. The last time that we surveyed on this, it was about a 30% gap between those that actually provide success plans and the partners want it and the ones that actually are providing it. It's a pretty sizable gap.
Hopefully a lot of companies are listening. Either they eyeing on working with partners, or they already have a partner and a channel strategy in place, but they want to optimize it. Is there a framework that you recommend that companies that want to embrace a partner success strategy follow so that they have a more comprehensive approach and one that's effective?
We actually have a free ebook that's out there that you can download from our website, and it is the 7 levers of LAER transformation. This is a playbook that's designed for companies that are going through this transformation from a legacy model to a subscription or recurring revenue business model. And there are 7 critical steps that happen in that framework. But if you put your partner lens on it, the first one is to get alignment on what is it you want to do with partners. What are they going to be doing in your business, and how are you going to be able to do more with less with them? So get clear and aligned on your strategy. Then you put in place metrics and KPIs. What are the metrics and KPIs that are going to achieve that strategy? And then you decide, okay, well, what are the critical practices that we need to have in place in order to meet those KPIs? And then from there, you go into the roles and responsibilities, the skills that are required, the organizational structure. And after all of those 6 steps are in place, then you get into the compensation, or in our case, the financial incentive. Walking through those 7 steps, it's not an overnight process. It takes time, but the companies that I've seen that succeed are the ones that take a realistic approach and say, this is going to be a transformation. It's going to take us maybe 2 years. We don't have all of these practices in place, but we're going to start to put these in place, and we're going to transform over time. And once they do that and the channel has shifted and their partners are driving adoption and customer success, then those are the ones that we're going to see succeed in the future because they're leveraging those economies of scale.
We talked about doing it right with the partners and developing the right strategy, teaching partners about customer success and the impact that it could have. I got to tell you, I've been talking to several companies that have a partner program, and they either don't have enough budget or to invest teaching their partners about customer success, or they fear that if they do so, especially if it's a value-added reseller, I'm teaching them customer success. They might still sell to the customer, but they might sell my competitors' widgets. Do you ever come across that fear? Is that common, or did I just hit a few that, oh,
No, it is. It happens all the time. There's frustration that builds on the vendor side because they are making this transformation, this shift. And if they have a substantial amount of their revenue through their channel or through indirect partners, they're going to need to have their partners make this shift as well. And oftentimes they kind of like forget the amount of work that it takes to transform their business model. And partners need to make that transformation themselves. And so they either put the mechanisms in place, the training, incentives, et cetera, in order to help partners to bring them along. Or the other thing that I see vendors wanting to do is just go out and recruit new partners. They will call it the partner of the future. These are partners that already have customer success in place. They've seen the light. They're a well-oiled machine. We're going to go out and find those partners. The problem in both scenarios, though, is the same, is they still need to provide some sort of value to partners. They need to essentially pitch their product or why the partner should be wanting to do adoption, why a partner should be dedicating a headcount to driving adoption of their offer. And that value prop includes all of the things that are going to reduce the risk for partners. How is a partner going to walk in and get training, get enablement? What are they going to be measured on? And how are they going to get rewarded? If it's clear to partners, it's like you're going to in a Shark Tank presentation. If it's clear to partners the value that they're going to get, then on one side, the partners will invest in the resources and they will come on board. The other side, you'll be able to attract those partners of the future because they will see the opportunity. In both cases, vendors need to remember that partners have a business too, and they need to, profitability is king, profitability and growth. And so to the extent that they can set partners up for success to drive profitability and growth, then they'll be on their way.
who does this the best these days? Who has like the best partner success program?
As far as end-to-end programs, no one has quite figured out the whole Frankenstein model because it's again, those 7 roles that partners can play. No one's quite figured out how to do a partner role successfully in all 7 areas. But we do have at TSIA a star award that we hand out every year. And we've had a number of companies that have applied, a number of companies that have won for various reasons. One company won because of how they've transformed their partner program. Another company has won because of how they've implemented certain enablement. Actually, when I was at Cisco, we won a star award for best practices for customer success with partners because of our strategy. So this has been around for a number of years, and that's where companies shine within TSIA, and that's how you can find who's doing well.
All the partners and all the companies, but I have seen Cisco making lots of investments in their partner program as well as Salesforce.
There's a number of other TSIA member companies that have made major investments that are all in with their channel because they see that in order to do more with less, in order to drive profitable revenue growth, they're going to need to leverage their channel. Doing it alone and going direct, at some point, there'll be a point of diminishing returns. As long as business leaders are under pressure to deliver profitable revenue growth, then there'll be a place for the channel partners.
Do you think partners also own some responsibility and need to change their ways and not lean too hard on vendors? Listen, I only ask that. It's clear what ideally a vendor should provide a partner. It's a major investment, and not all of them would have the budget to do so. Sometimes it might seem to them that it's easier to just get a partner that already has invested in customer success. And so I'm a partner and I wanted to get to like VIP status with my vendor company. Maybe I need to take the initiative to learn how to create success plans, to elevate my value proposition, to learn the right metrics and put some investments into my customer success practice.
100%. There are partners that have seen the light, that are wanting to do that. And then there are other partners that are just kind of waiting for things to play out. Because oftentimes partners have a business model built on the legacy revenue, hardware transactions, et cetera. And so to kind of put the investments in place to build a customer success organization, that requires them to be convinced that this is the way to go. Partners oftentimes follow the vendors. And so as the vendors are moving, then there's a lag and the partners will come along as well. But absolutely, there is responsibility on the partner side to be able to step in and share that risk as well.
I think that partners to tech vendors that are not doubling down on customer success are going to see either like they're going to get stuck in a certain revenue level. They'll have 500 accounts and half of them are not even engaged. They're just collecting revenues, but they're not doing more business with them. So they're basically leaving money on the floor. Or they're going to have other partners that double down on it, and all of a sudden they become the favorite kids. That's what's going to happen. So I'm going to put a shameless plug. If anybody here is a partner to a vendor and they do want to double down on their customer success strategy, if they don't have one up and they want to start something from scratch, or they have something, but it looks more like a glorified support organization, and it certainly doesn't give them the performance that you just mentioned, a 23% uplift in revenue. Wow. I mean, that's something to be said about something. I have the program, the customer method. I've been promoting it for the past few months. It's built specifically for any tech companies, services or resellers or software companies that do not have a customer success practice in place, or it's a little bit meh, like, and you don't know why. You need a better success plan template. You need a QBR template. You need to know how to get more out of your renewals, how to engage customers so that there's an increase in adoption, especially if you have a consumption model. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, go to my website, reach out. I'll be more than happy to share. How does it work? It's not an expensive endeavor. I think it's going to be completely worth your while to just accelerate that path to getting to where you need to be for your company, for your team, and for your vendor company. I think it's going to achieve all of these goals. Jared, thank you so much for coming. For software vendors, like Jared said, there's like so many things and nobody completely figured it out yet. And that's, I think, where the power of community comes in. You don't want to make a lot of mistakes, especially since this is more of a nascent maneuver for companies. We're just starting to seeing the results for those who did venture out and double down on it before everybody else. Connect with Jared. He has all the benchmark data. He didn't share everything he knows on this conversation, and he can connect you with others that have already figured this out. And you can come to the TSIA conference and meet me in person and meet Jared in person, and he'll match you up with those executives that come to those conferences every year, sometimes twice a year. And you can have those deep dive conversations, real conversations with the real executives that actually double down on those practices and learn a lot. Unlike other conferences, what I love about the TSIA conferences is you don't just come in to hear some presentations. You actually get to have deep, meaningful conversations with other very high level executives from typically very large companies that have massive amount of budget to just double down on these things. So that's it. Shameless plug for TSIA too. I personally love it. I'm at those conferences at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. I enjoy them immensely. And I think what TSIA does for the tech industry cannot be summed up by just a few words. The impact that you guys had on the level of strategies that those companies have is, I don't think anybody can quantify it. It's absolutely amazing. So thank you for everything that you do. Any closing words, Jared?
There was a concept that I learned about. If you're sitting in the left seat of an aircraft, the pilot, and then there's a co-pilot sitting in the right seat. If you look at a gauge in the middle, you're going to have two different perspectives on what that gauge is. And that's called a parallax. And I took that concept. One of the trends that I've seen in this industry, especially when it comes to customer success and partners, is that vendors tend to look at this customer success from one perspective, and they fail to see what it looks like from the partner's perspective. So if there is a single takeaway, all of the things we talked about, incentives and metrics, training, if you can put yourself in the partner's seat and look at this from the partner's perspective, then you're setting yourself up for a win, because you're able to see what the partner needs to be successful. And then as a result, you're going to be successful.
With that, it's a wrap. I hope you got inspired. If you liked this conversation, give this video a like, share it with somebody else that can benefit from hearing these stats, industry trends, and get inspired for 2025. I'll see you at the next video.